Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name is Raymond, and in this video I'm taking a look at The Last of Us Escape the Dark, designed by Thomas Pike, Alex Crispin and James Shelton, and published by Themeborne, who were kind enough to send over a copy for me to review. This is a cooperative game of pressing your luck, rolling dice and survival for 1 to 5 players, which plays in about an hour to 2 hours for ages 14 and up. And before I start explaining how to play the game and share my thoughts on it, I'd like to ask you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. That really helps the channel a lot. And also please check out my Patreon page if you'd like to support what I do by clicking the link in the description below, and there you can read how you too can support me for less than a cup of coffee a month. And supporters of my channel get early access to all of my videos, their name in the credits as a supporter, and also access to Patreon exclusive content that I post twice a month, and you automatically save up for the Board Game Heaven enamel pin. Alright, let's quickly set up a game. To set up a game of The Last of Us Escape the Dark, fold out the game board and put it in the middle of the table. Then take these 5 location clear cards, which have some text on the back, and just shuffle those and randomly distribute them over these 5 locations. That's where you're going to be traveling, and put those cards there. Then take all of these encounter cards. There's a whole bunch of them. They're very big and they have a location printed on the bottom. So this is the lakeside here. So you take those cards, just separate all of them from the rest. And every location has 7 of these cards. You give those a shuffle, and then you take 4 of them and put them on the appropriate location on top of the location clear cards, and the remaining 3 are returned to the box without looking at them. And you do the same for all 5 locations. Next, take these quarantine zone cards from Fedra, which is the location where you'll be starting. And depending on the number of players, the number of survivors you're playing, take either these cards for 2 or 3 survivors, or these for 4 or 5 survivors. Give those a shuffle and then randomly pick 2 to place on these 2 spots and remove the remaining 1 back to the box. Then take the camp cards over here, and again, depending on the number of players, say we're playing 3 players right now, take that deck and remove the other from the game. Give that a shuffle as well, and then put 1 camp card on each location in the indicated spot and return the remaining card to the box. Then take the stashed item deck with the number 1 that corresponds with these 3 spots on the board. Give that deck a shuffle as well and put 4 cards on each of those locations. And there should be 1 remaining card which you return to the box. And do the same thing for the stashed items with the 2 on it. Again, shuffle it, place 4 cards here and 4 cards there, and then there's 1 remaining card which is also returned to the box. Then you take the threat tokens and place 3 at the downtown and suburbs location each, 2 at the sewers location, and 1 at the lakeside and university locations, starting from the left. Randomly pick 1 of these 3 cards, those are the end bosses, and put 1 of them on the final destination spot over there. Put the crafted item cards on their indicated spot. You don't need to shuffle those. You do shuffle the item deck and put that on this indicated spot. Put the upgraded weapon deck over here and the special ability deck over here. You don't need to shuffle these either. Keep these boss tokens nearby. Just randomly put them on the table. Give that a bit of a shuffle. Then put the survivor calendar marker on spot 1 and the infected calendar marker, that's the black one, on the X over there. And just keep these trays with all the threat markers and these X's and these black cubes that you're gonna need on your character boards, and all of the dice nearby. And now you need to prepare your survivors. Every player picks 1 of the 6 survivors, choosing 1 of these boards, and if you're playing solo, you'll be controlling 2 survivors. Every survivor puts one of these black cubes on their health track at the maximum here at 14, and that's to keep track of your health points. Every character has a character flaw. In this case, Ellie is lonely, and they can overcome that flaw by unlocking these 3 challenges. So you place 1 cube on each of those challenges and you remove them as you play the game and overcome those challenges. You find your character's die and token, and then you take the starting weapon deck, which are these cards, and depending on the number of players, you divide those cards among the characters. In a 2 or 3 player game, you need 1 revolver, 1 pistol, and 2 planks. And in a 4 or 5 player game, you take all of those cards. If you're taking a melee weapon, which is the plank here, then you check their durability, that's 2, so you place 2 cubes on the durability track here. And if you're taking a ranged weapon, you check its capacity, that's the number of bullets it can hold, so that's 2 in this case, and you put 2 cubes on the capacity track right there. A character can only hold 1 melee weapon and 1 ranged weapon, so give the other 2 to another player. You can of course divide them however you want. The game also has 2 of these player reference cards, which have all your actions and the things you can do on one side, and what a search action is on the other side. Even has the starting weapons explained here. So just put those cards within easy reach. Place your character tokens over here in the quarantine zone. Flip over the 2 Fedra cards here. And then you're ready to play. So let's explain the rules. So as you've seen, every character board has a number of slots for cards. There's 1 ranged weapon slot, 1 melee weapon slot, there's 1 ammo slot, and 3 item slots. Now, there is a limit to the number of different items you can have. And of course, there's only 1 slot for ammo, but if you find multiple ammo cards, you can stack them on the same spot right there. And the same goes for the items. If you find any duplicate items, you can just stack those cards on that slot, but you can only have a maximum of 3 different ones. Now, if you ever get a card and you don't have space for it on your character board, you can either discard a card you already have, or give it to another survivor who is in the same location as you are. You can use it straight away if it's something you can just use and one-time use and then discard, or you just discard that card right away if you don't want it. Simply keep a discard pile for used items next to the board where the item cards are. If the item deck or any of these stashed item decks ever run out, they are never replenished. You simply found everything that that location has to offer. The object of the game is to travel through several locations and get to Jackson, which is the card in the back there, and defeat the final boss. And if you do that before time runs out, you win the game together. But if the time runs out, which means the calendar markers collide, the white and the black one, or if any survivor dies along the way when their hit points are reduced to 0, then everybody immediately loses the game. So right at the beginning of the game, you are presented with a choice here. You can go either west or east or split the party, and the card will tell you what happens. So here it says, interrogate a Federal guard. You gain intel at 2 different locations and you draw 3 items from the item deck. But each survivor taking this route loses 2 hit points right away, because this is a dangerous way to go. Now, gaining intel means that you can flip over the top card of the stashed item deck at, in this case, 2 different locations. So that means that you know what's going to be there. And these cards have numbers on them there. You can see here there's an 8 in white and a 5 in black. That means that there are 8 positive weapons or items in here, things you can use, and 5 negative ones. The negative ones are usually just events that happen. You draw the card, you read what it says, and you apply the consequences. So having intel and knowing what the top card is gives you a bit of an edge, because you can also just draw from that deck when the opportunity arises, but then you will have to take a risk if it's something good or bad. The east path says contact the fireflies, gain intel at the university, which is that location over there, so you know what the top card of the stashed item deck there will be. And you gain intel at the lakeside, which is over there on the left. You draw, or you flip over that card and you draw one item from the item deck, but you don't lose any hit points going that way. So you can travel as a group to the right or to the left, but you can also split up if you prefer. And once you've made your choice, you can start your turns. So every player has a turn, and every turn you get to do two things. The first phase is the travel phase, during which survivors can move between locations. Now at first that's very simple, so let's say Marlene is heading west here, and Ellie and Joel are going east, so I'll just put their markers on some of these spots here. And the second thing you do is your action phase, and during that phase players can only take one daily action each. And in addition to that, there's also some free preparation actions and possibly some bonus actions for successful exploration. So let's go over what all of that means step by step. So on day one, after making your choices here, you automatically already travel east or west, so you can skip the travel phase basically. On any subsequent turns, if you want to travel, that is optional, but you can, but you need a free path. These lines on the board are the paths between locations, so you can see from here, from downtown, I can only travel to the sewers, and the same with the suburbs, but they start from this location, which means you need to clear out these tokens, and I'll explain how that works in a bit. So right now Marlene couldn't travel to the sewers anyway. Whenever you arrive at a location with a camp card that hasn't been flipped over yet, you just simply flip that over immediately. So there's one here as well. And then you take your action phase. So what can you do on an action phase? You can either camp at the campsite, or explore, which means you flip over one of these cards. And after taking that action, that character has taken their daily turn, their daily action, and you flip over that token to the black side here, indicating that they've taken their turn. And when all players have taken their turns and they're all flipped over to the dark side, then you move the player calendar token one space to the right from spot 1 to spot 2. And the turn overview card will have that information on it as well. So it says explore, camp, and the free actions here, which are using an item, trading, reloading your weapon, or crafting an item, and we'll go over what all of those things do in a bit. This camp card says there's an ammo stash, which has one use, and medical supplies, which has one use. Most of these have one use. And this one says fully reload a ranged weapon up to 2 survivors. So if there was another survivor with Marlene here, and one of those survivors took that action, then both survivors, and if there are more, you just pick 2 of them, can fully reload a ranged weapon. But right now we just started, so our weapons are fully loaded. And also there's medical supplies, which says restore 3 hit points for 1 survivor only. So it doesn't have to be the player that uses that action. It can also be another player that is with them. They can apply first aid to them. And once a player uses the camp action, they take one of these tokens, flip it over to the X side, and just put that on that spot, indicating that that action at the camp has been taken. And then you flip over your character, and that's the end of your turn. But we've fully loaded and we've got all our hit points still. So Marlene is going to instead explore. So for the example, let's just say that Ellie actually chose to go with Marlene here, and there's 2 people here. Marlene says, I'm going to explore. Then the other player can decide to join them and join them in whatever encounter happens. Or she can choose to be left behind and then on their turn take the camp action, for example. The explore action can only be taken once per day at each location. So you either go alone and the rest stays behind and doesn't explore on that same day, or everybody joins in, or a number of people join in, depending on how many players are playing, of course, and do the explore action. So if both of them are gonna go in, then you need to decide who is going to take the lead. So let's say Marlene is taking the lead this time, and on her character board here, it says the top one is take the lead. You flip a chapter card. So that means she has overcome her first flaw. You can remove that cube. And you can do that immediately once one of the players takes that action. So there we go. We flip over the first card right here. There's a bit of text here that the leading player then reads out to the other players. And then it will usually present you with some kind of test. So here it says you find a safe and you're trying to open it. So to try and crack the lock, nominate one survivor present to roll 2 of these wisdom icons or 1 crit in 3 rolls. So now we check our character boards, which I'm going to have to move here. And you can see there that Marlene has a might of 2, cunning of 3, and a wisdom of 4. She's actually pretty wise. So she probably has the best chance of opening this lock. So we take her die and Marlene rolls the die, and she's rolled both a wisdom and a cunning. So both apply, but you only need wisdom. So that's 1 in 1 of 3 rolls. So here's the second roll, and it's the same. So we have 2 wisdom, and that's it. That's all we needed. So the number 4 on Marlene's card next to the wisdom means that she has 4 in 6 chance to roll it, which is, of course, this side has a wisdom, this side has a wisdom, this side has a wisdom, the other sides do not, but this is the crit side, which is always a success. So crit is basically a wild. So we've been successful here. It says jackpot, discard a threat token and then search. If you failed, then you just discard a threat token. So this is a threat token that gets discarded. But now we get to search. So the back of this card explains what searching does. So here it says search. As a group, take any 2 bonus actions below. So that's not an action, it's a bonus action, that's free. Or you lose a day, which means the black token on the calendar moves to the left 1 spot, and you add a boss token to take 4 bonus actions instead of 2. So the bonus actions you can choose from, and you can do multiple of the same if you prefer, is gaining intel. Again, reveal 1 stashed item card at any location. You can raid a stash, which means you can draw 1 revealed stashed card. Or you can draw blind, you just draw an unrevealed card with a risk, of course. Or you can scavenge, which just means you draw 1 item card from the item deck. Now I did forget to flip over intel at any 2 different locations. So let's say we flipped over this card and this card, which makes sense because those are the first locations we visit. So now we could do the same. We could gain intel at another location, which might be handy later. So let's use 1 of those actions to flip over this location's first card. And that is an event, and it says on reveal, danger avoided, discard this card, because you have knowledge that there's some kind of trap there, some kind of thing you need to be wary of. So it won't happen. If it is drawn, then something bad happens. Tripwires, you lose 2 HP. But that won't happen now because we've gotten intel. So that was good. This card is gone. And that means that 1 of the 5 cards that are bad are now permanently removed. We also don't know which card was returned to the box. That could be a good card or a bad card. So for our second free bonus action, yeah, we may want to raid the stash because Marlene does not have a melee weapon. Oh, this is probably ranged weapon. This is a ranged weapon, but it is a much better weapon than the revolver that we have, which has a capacity of 1 bullet, fire rate of 1, so you can only roll 1 die, which is this type of dice, which has a 4 in 6 chance of hitting. So 2 of them are misses. This one has the same capacity and fire rate, but you can use it in a sneak attack. If you succeed, you deal 3 damage, or 3 cubes are removed, which we will see later, 3 dice. Or you can use it in combat. So if you hit in ranged combat, you remove 1 black die. And that's pretty good if you want to sneak. Now for sneaking, you need a good chance of cunning. I'll explain sneaking in a bit. And Ellie has a high cunning of 4, so we may want to raid that stash and give this to Ellie. And then maybe I want to give this gun to Marlene, and this gun is then discarded because there's no one else here at this location to take this. So now that we've taken our 2 free bonus actions for searching here being successful, we just discard this card and our turns are over. So those tokens are flipped and we move on to Joel. So Joel is also not going to camp right away. He's fine. So he's going to explore, and that means flipping over the top chapter card. And this card says there's a sniper over there. They're shooting at you, so shots ring out as you scramble to withdraw. So all survivors present must roll a hit dice equal to the threat level, losing 1 HP for each of this symbol rolled. So the hit dice are the black ranged dice here. And the threat level is currently 3. We have 3 threat tokens here. And only Joel is present, so he's the one being shot at, of course. So you just take all of those dice, roll them. We're in luck, we've missed twice, and there's 1 hit, so Joel loses 1 hit point. If you survive, we did, discard a threat token and then search. So this gets discarded, and now we get to search. So Joel is going to gain intel here, and there's a gun, a ranged weapon, and he's going to raid a stash here and take the pipe, which is better than the plank he currently has. And again, I forgot, because Joel went east, he gains intel at the university, so that means this card is also flipped over. He gains intel at the lakeside, so we're doing good on intel right now. And we draw 1 item, so I draw 1 of these items from the item deck, and this is sugar, so I just put that in my inventory. So I've survived, we've searched, I remove this card, and I flip my token over. At the end of the day, when all characters have taken their turns and flipped over their tokens to the dark side on any of these locations, then the survivor calendar token moves forward 1 spot. And anytime a card or effect tells you that you've lost a day, then the black token here moves to the left 1 spot. And whenever a card or an event tells you to add a boss token, you randomly pick 1 of these tokens and add them to the track here. And whenever the calendar token reaches a spot with an exclamation mark, and that means you put a threat token on every location if there is still room for it. So all of these spots will get 1 extra threat token. And that was our first day. So right now we still can't travel in either location because there's still a threat token here on our path. So we're gonna have to either camp or explore again. So at the start of the new day, everybody flips over their tokens again. And once again, we decide what we're gonna do. Now we don't have to take turns in a fixed order. We can also now say, well, let's have Ellie go and explore now instead of Marlene, or maybe Joel wants to take the next turn. And on his previous turn, you couldn't see that, Joel also took the lead because he was the only one exploring, so we get to remove 1 of those cubes. Since Marlene and Ellie are still good on ammo and medical supplies, oh, and by the way, because Marlene now got this pistol from Ellie, which has a capacity of 2, that it was still full, because we haven't used it yet, she gets an extra ammo there. And because Ellie now has the hunting bow, which has a capacity of 1 cube is removed. So let's explore again. Simply flip over another card, and now we have an encounter. So here it says we're confronted by Fedra agents demanding that you raise your hands and prepare to be searched. As you try to reason with them, one of them suddenly draws their firearm. So you have to choose one of these 2 options. You can submit to the search, discard a total of 2 item or weapon or ammo cards as the guards, and the guards will let you pass, and you discard a threat token. But then you lose valuable items, of course. And if you can't, if Marlene had gone in alone, then she only has 1 card, then you can't choose that option. So you can refuse, and that means you, and if you is indicated in capital letters here, that means the person taking the lead is the targeted person here, and they must roll a hit die, losing 2 hit points for each black result rolled. So they take a hit die. So only if Marlene took the lead here, rolls this die, that is a hit. So she immediately loses 2 health. And then you begin combat. Now there's going to be a lot of combat in this game, so let's explain that right now. So let's take a closer look at this card here. Here it says you can go in solo, which is if one character decides to explore, or you can go in as a group, which we currently did. There's also a listen and a sneak icon here, but these are grayed out and crossed off. There are of course also cards which have this in black, which means you can listen and you can sneak, and I'll explain that in a minute. So let's see what this threat is when we start combat. If you're going in solo, it says you need to have 1 black die for each threat token. So there's 2, so that's 2 black dice, plus a fist, which is might, the asterisk, which is wisdom, and a question mark, which means you just roll 1 die. So that would be a total of 5 dice if you're going in solo. But if you're going in as a group, you do this. You have 1 black die per exclamation mark per threat. You need 1 might and 1 rolled die. But those are per player. They are between brackets here. So I'll get the dice. And that's a total of 6 dice for this encounter because there's 2 of us. So we have 1 fist for each character. So that's 2 fists right there. Then 2 dice for the threat tokens and 2 dice because we're 2 characters, and those are just rolled. So the remaining 4 dice are simply rolled. And I get this double result. I get another might, and another double result here. So these are now our challenges. Now before we start combat, if I was able to listen or sneak, that's usually when you creep up on an opponent that hasn't seen you yet. Now these obviously are already seeing us. They're training their gun on us. So we have no choice but to start combat. But if it was one of the cards that would allow you to listen or sneak, you can see here on the back of this card what that is. So there's a listen round and a sneak round. If you want to listen, then you pick one of the players who wants to do that. And since listen requires wisdom, this would be a good check for Marlene to do. So she takes her die. And then you need to roll, of course, a wisdom in 1 roll. If there's a success, you can change 3 chapter dice, which would mean I could flip these double results to single results. And there's a lot of might here. Now, we both only have 2 might, because as you can see here, Ellie only has 1 fist here, and so does Marlene. And the other one would be then the crit, of course, because that's the wild. That's the only chances they have, 2 out of 6, to roll a fist. So this is not really great for us. So if I manage to listen before combat, if that was possible, I could, and I succeed, I could change one of those fists to something better as well, and so increase our chances of winning. If I roll a crit in 1 roll instead of just wisdom, then I can change 5 chapter dice, which is even better. But if I fail, we need to add 1 chapter die. So we just take another one of those black dice, we roll it, and we add it. So let's have Marlene try and listen. And just imagine that we could do that here. And she succeeds. So that would mean I could change some of these dice. So this is a double. I'll change that to a cunning, because Ellie's really good at cunning. I'll change this one to cunning as well. Or actually, yeah, I'll change this one to wisdom. So make it a little bit simpler for us. It wasn't a crit, so I can only change 3 of them. And after that, regardless of the result, you can choose whether to make another listen check for a different survivor who joined in the encounter, or to end the listen round and try a sneak round. You can also always choose just to do a sneak round and not risk failing a listen round. So you just skip that and go straight to sneaking. Now Ellie's sneak, which requires cunning right there. Cunning is 4, so Ellie is good at sneaking. And if Ellie rolled her dice, so we hadn't sneaked, we just, oh, that's a crit, that's even better. Now when you pass a sneak check, that character becomes hidden. And after the first character passes a sneak check, then the players can decide that another character, if they are indeed in battle with them, can also do a sneak check and also become hidden, or you just pass on that and the hidden player, the one that passed the sneak check, can now do a sneak attack. And players that do a sneak attack, then in any order you choose, every hidden survivor, so survivors that pass that sneak check, can take either a melee or a ranged sneak attack. A melee sneak attack does not require any special weapons. It automatically hits and possibly do more damage if they have a melee weapon that says so. Or you can do a ranged sneak attack that requires a ranged weapon or a throwable item, but that doesn't automatically hit. You roll an ammo die to see if the survivor hits, and for each hit rolled, you apply the damage as described on your ranged weapon or item card being used. And if you rolled a crit, you remove an additional die. But if the ammo dice miss, that sneak attack has no effect. And enemies never attack back during the sneak round. So you could remove one of those double result dice if you choose. And if it was a crit success, then you remove 2 instead. But should they fail that sneak round, they take the highest damage, which means the highest damage on that chapter card. There's 2 kinds of damage. There's ranged damage and there's melee damage. Here it says the ranged damage, the top one, is 2. And the melee damage, the bottom one, is 1. So the person who fails then takes 2 damage. So that's how that works. You can do one listen and or sneak round with any or all survivors in the encounter. And after you've taken either your listening or sneaking rounds and either succeeding or failing, then it's time to do actual combat. So here we have the combat round. Each survivor must take 1 combat action. You roll at the same time. So as you can see here on this card, combat has a number of actions you can take. So the simplest one is just a melee action, the melee combat, which means you just use your big character dice to attack. So if both Ellie and Marlene are engaged in combat here, they both roll their dice and you check what they roll. So we have here Marlene rolls a wisdom, which means we may remove a corresponding icon from this encounter. So this is going away. Ellie rolled a crit, which is great because now she gets to choose which die to remove. So since they're both not great on might, she's going to remove a might die. Now both of them also rolled that shield symbol around the crit and the wisdom token here. There's 2 faces on the dice that have that symbol, so it's always one with one of their strengths and one that simply says crit. Where is it? There it is. And here as well, the crit for this one, and here on the cunning for Ellie. And when you roll that, so Ellie here had the crit and Marlene had the wisdom, both with a shield, then that means that after the combat round, after in this case they took a melee action, the enemy will attack back. Now, if you did a ranged attack first, so Ellie used her bow, for example, I'll explain ranged in a bit, that's the second one, and the pistol, then the enemy will also shoot back with a ranged attack if they have it, and this one says 2 damage. So they would hit both survivors, all the survivors engaged in combat, for 2 damage. But since they rolled a shield, they dodge that attack. They do not get hit. They were shielded. Maybe they were hiding behind something. So they don't take that damage. So that is absolutely great. In this case, of course, they had a melee attack. So you look at the second one here, the melee attack, that's this other icon, the symbol at the bottom here, with a 1 inside in this case. So they only deal 1 damage in melee. So they would have normally taken 1 damage each, but again, shields, so no damage was taken. So how does ranged attack work then? Well, in that case, you don't roll these dice, but you check your ranged weapons. So Ellie has this bow, which does not require ammo, has a capacity of 1, so she can only shoot 1 arrow basically, which is one of those white dice, and her fire rate is also just 1, so you can only roll 1, and she has 1, so that makes sense. And if she hits in combat, you take away 1 die of your choice, because this does not have a symbol. You can just remove 1 of those black chapter dice. And Marlene has this 9mm pistol, which has a capacity of 2 ammo. She's got 2 of those black ammo cubes. You can only shoot 1 at a time, and if it hits, you get to remove a black cube. So let's roll one of those white dice for Ellie here. That's a hit. and that removes one black die, so we can remove this one, for example. And then Marlene rolls one as well, also just a fire rate of 1. And that is also a hit, and that means another die is removed. Yeah, let's also remove this mite. So that was the second round of attacking. Normally you probably do it the other way around, use ranged weapons first and then melee, but it depends on what you want to do and how much damage they do. And when you attack, all players can roll their dice simultaneously and then decide how they want to divide their results, because of course you have to see what results you roll and what matching symbols these chapter dice have in order to remove those. So just do that simultaneously. So we've talked about melee attacking and shooting, so the ranged attack, and how the enemies respond to that with also a ranged or a melee attack. And the enemy doesn't roll for that, that just automatically hits. Another thing you can do is to throw something. If you have a throwable item such as these, for example, these are these items that you can draw from the deck. So this and this is a throwable item. There's a bottle and a brick, and you can use them on your sneak check as well. So it says here, instead of rolling, discard to automatically pass a sneak check. So these are really nice to have. If your sneaking isn't great and you want to, or you just really 100% want to pass, you can discard this to distract whoever you're fighting and pass your sneak check. And then there's the combat round. So if you use this in regular combat, you can discard it to throw, and then you use one of those ranged die. So it's basically just the same as a ranged weapon, just with one die, and if you hit, you remove one chapter die. Next, you can reload. Well, you can only reload if an ally attacks, which means if you're engaged in combat and there's only one of you, then you can't reload because you're engaged in combat. There's no time. You need to just fight. And if you can't shoot anything or throw anything, then you're gonna have to make a melee attack with your melee die. But if you really need to reload and you have ammo for it, here it says on the ammo card, you can use it as a preparation action, which is outside of combat, and you just discard it to add 1 cube to your ammo track. But during combat, it's not a free action. As your combat action, discard to add 1 cube to your ammo. So that takes up your combat action. You're not shooting, but you're reloading your weapon, but then after that action, the enemy does get to shoot back. So reloading with ammo during combat isn't great. You should always try to do that beforehand. Now, 2 other things you can do is withdrawing or bypassing. So if you want to withdraw, then all survivors involved in this combat must agree to do so together in the same round. And when you do, combat ends immediately, no further damage is dealt. You remove all remaining enemy chapter dice from the board, put them back in the supply. You flip the withdrawing survivors tokens to their black sides, because that was their turn. But you leave the chapter card where it is. It is not removed as you would after defeating a card. So the survivors are going to have to deal with it on another day. So you don't also get to discard a threat token or take the search action, which is usually at the end here, which I will explain in a bit. And also at the end of the game, if you're fighting the final boss, you cannot withdraw. After withdrawing from combat, you are free to travel to a different location on the next day if you want to, provided of course that the route is not blocked by a threat token. Or you can re-enter combat on the next day, either with the same survivors or with different survivors, or you can go solo. And then when you re-enter combat, you ignore any of the U effects on the chapter card, because you basically already dealt with that previously, and immediately begin combat. You will have to set up all the chapter dice from scratch again, because you remove the remaining ones. You have to reset all of those. And the listen and sneak rounds are once again available if permitted by the card, of course. Finally, you can also bypass. All survivors need to agree to bypass, just like withdrawing. And then you discard the chapter card and put all remaining enemy chapter dice back in the supply. You do discard 1 threat token from the location, but all survivors taking that bypass action lose 2 hit points. And again, just like normal, you flip both or all the tokens that were involved in that action to the black sides. You also lose a day, which means the black calendar token moves to the left one spot, and you add a boss token to the boss track. You do not get to search the location, and of course you cannot bypass the boss either. So let's finish this combat. Let's see, we've got 2 more dice left. Marlene did use her gun, so she spent 1 ammo, but we still have our ranged weapons. Let's try for a ranged attack again. So Ellie rolls and hits, and Marlene rolls and hits as well and spends an ammo. So that means we got 2 hits. We can remove the remaining dice here. We were successful. The enemy is instantly defeated, does not get to shoot back, so we just remove that card, and just like normal, you just read the bottom of the card there and says, if you defeat this enemy, discard a threat token and then search. So 1 threat token is removed, and we get to search, which again means, like it says here on the back, we get either 2 free bonus actions as a group, or we choose to take 4 bonus actions, but that means we lose a day and add a boss token. So we can once again choose what to do. Let's gain some intel right here. And that is a switchblade, which is really good for Ellie actually, who is here. So as our second action, we are going to raid the stash and take that switchblade, which is an item, so that can go on Ellie's item slot. And we flip the tokens over to the dark side. And that was the whole combat. Now, because I did the listening and sneaking examples here, we didn't actually get to fight these double results, but when you have dice with double results on them, that means you need to defeat both of those symbols. So either by rolling melee dice, if you roll this, well, this is twice wisdom, so we could remove a wisdom, but the eye would still remain. So this would be a miss. So had somebody else rolled an eye, for example, then we would have matched that die and we could have removed this. Or you could be really lucky and roll the same results on a die, and then this die would remove this die. And again, on a crit, you get to remove any chapter die, even if it has 2 symbols on it. And the last things you still need to know is the preparation actions and the crafting menu right here on the card. So those are free actions you can use. You can either use an item in your inventory and just do what it says, which for example here on the ammo card was as the preparation action. You can discard this to add 1 cube to my ammo track. Since I spent all my ammo, I could do that either at the end or at the beginning of my turn when I'm not interacting with one of these chapter cards, when I'm not in combat. So if this was the next day and Joel had also taken their turn and the calendar tracker moves forward 1 spot, then I could say, well, before I start exploring, I want to discard this card as a free preparation action and just get 1 ammo back for my gun. You can also trade, which can only be done with survivors at the same location. So for example, if Ellie here had found a bottle and she wants to give it to Marlene, you can just freely trade that as long as you have spaces left to put those cards. And again, duplicate cards can be stacked on top of each other on the same spot. You can craft, which means you have several cards that you combine. So it has here the crafting menu, which says you have a health kit if you combine alcohol and a rag. So if along the way you find some items and you've got alcohol and a rag, they'll also say on the cards themselves, alcohol plus rag is either a health kit or a Molotov cocktail. It says here on the rag as well, so these 2 can be combined for a health kit or a Molotov cocktail. So you simply take those cards, you discard them, and then you grab the crafted item deck, which is this deck right here, and you simply go through it. You don't need to shuffle these cards, so you just look for the card you want. Here is the Molotov. Maybe you want to get the Molotov cocktail, or if you're bad on health, low on health, you get the health kit, and it will say what it does on those cards every time. So here it says, again, you can use this for a sneak check. Instead of rolling, discard it to pass a sneak check, which you can also do with a regular bottle, so you might not want to waste a Molotov on that. But sometimes you have no other choice. Or you can use it in a combat round, and a blank is of course a miss, so there's no effect and you discard it. But if you hit, then at the start of each round, remove a chapter die because you set the enemy on fire. And then after combat, you discard that card. And here the health kit says during a preparation, so as a free action, you can discard this to restore a total of 4 hit points shared among any number of survivors. So you can take 3 and give 1 to another, or split it up 2-2, doesn't matter. It's 4 hit points in total with all the people in that location. Or during a combat round, you can discard to restore 2 HP to your survivor, but that's not a combat action. So it's still a free action, but you'll only get 2 because you're doing it hastily. And there's a bunch more things you can make right there on the card. So you've got, we've seen the health kit and the Molotov. You can make a nail bomb out of explosives and a blade. You can make a smoke bomb out of an explosive and sugar. You can make a shiv out of binding and a blade, but those can also be used to upgrade a melee weapon. So if you have a melee weapon and binding and a blade, so like these two, for example, here, these scissors, that's a blade, this tape is binding. So if I had found those previously, and let's say Ellie had those, and she wants to upgrade her weapon, she can discard these two and then look for the upgraded plank. And you look for those in the upgraded weapon deck, which you also don't need to shuffle. So there's all kinds of weapons here which are upgraded, and this is the regular rifle upgraded to a hunting rifle. Here's a pipe, which Joel currently has there, the metal pipe, which you can upgrade with a scissors and binding to a spiky thing. So that's an upgraded melee weapon. But we had the plank, so here is the upgraded plank, which only has a durability of 1 this time, but whenever you hit an enemy, you may discard 1 durability, so basically break the thing, to remove an additional 2 chapter dice. So that's a big hit there. So players continue fighting and exploring locations until they reach the final location in Jackson and fight the final boss. But you can also clear an entire location. So if you manage to go through all of these cards in a single location, then you get the location clear card. And that means you get an extra bonus. It says discard any remaining threat tokens at this location. Also discard any remaining cards in the stashed item deck at this location without looking at them, because you can't know if they're positive or negative cards. And then you turn this over. And when you turn it over, you'll get some kind of nice bonus. So here as a group, you may immediately take the following bonus actions. You can use medical supplies, and these are all different. There's 5 different cards. So restore 2 hit points to each survivor at this location. You can scavenge and draw a total of 3 items from the item deck. And we can use the workbench, which means we can upgrade and fully reload, or only fully reload, 1 ranged weapon in the inventory of 1 survivor at this location. You don't need ammo cards, and you also don't need the upgrade items. You just upgrade it for free, basically, because you found a workbench. And then at the end of the day, you discard this card. And when a location has been entirely cleared, that means no further threat tokens are placed here. These are just all removed, and this is entirely clear. This is removed. So all you can do here, if you want to, is use the camp and then move on. So if Marley and Ellie here on the next day decide to travel, they're gonna go here to the sewers, which has spots over here. Let me just remove this. They find a camp, you flip that over, and then gameplay just continues. And if Joel manages to remove another threat token there and also chooses to travel, he just joins the company there. And then you can choose to engage in a chapter card together or again as a group. Maybe 2 of them will engage and 1 of them will stay behind. Maybe they'll use the camp. That's all up to you to decide. So at the beginning of this explanation, we saw that characters have these character flaws and that you can remove these cubes and overcome those flaws, to become a better person by taking these actions. So if he took the lead at some point, that cube was removed. If you draw blind from one of those stashed item stacks, then you also take a cube away. And if in this case you manage to fight alone, explore alone, and defeat an enemy, then the last cube is also removed. And these will be different for all the characters. But once you remove the final cube, you can immediately take a special ability card, which are these cards. So let's take a closer look. You don't need to shuffle these either. You can just take this deck and pick one that you like from these 5 cards. And these are really good. So for example, we have Relentless here in the combat round, once per round when taking the melee action. So that's with your big white cube. If you roll a block, that's the shield, roll again and apply both results. So that's pretty good. Here it says dependable whenever you roll ammo dice or hit dice, so the white or the black ranged dice. If you wish to re-roll any of them, you may do so once. Here is ferocious. During combat, when taking the melee action, if you roll any single or a crit, it counts as 2 of that result, so it doubles the singles. You can also have attuned during listening. When you make a listen check, if you fail, you may re-roll once, which is excellent. And during combat, when taking the melee action, if your first roll includes wisdom, you may roll again and choose which of the 2 results to apply. And there's a same one for stealth. So when you make a sneak check, if you fail, you may re-roll. And here during melee, if you roll cunning, you may roll again and choose which one of those to apply. So maybe Joel wants to be relentless and you just put that card over this character flaw spot here, and this is now permanently something that character can do. So it is an excellent idea to try and get those character flaw cubes from your board as soon as possible. Might be a little bit reckless sometimes, but if you get all of them removed, you can pick one of those abilities, and that is really going to help you in your game. And at the end of the game, when all characters that are currently playing have reached the final destination and everybody's still alive, and some days will have probably passed, and you may have lost a few days as well, and maybe some events happened or you took some actions that resulted in you having to put one of those boss tokens next to the boss card, then it's time to face the final boss, which is just like any other encounter but tougher. So I'm not gonna flip this over and spoil that for you. You've already seen several cards in this video, but you can be assured that the final boss is quite the challenge. So make sure you are properly equipped. You've got plenty of hit points and items you can use, because you can no longer withdraw or bypass. You just have to win that battle. And of course, if you win that final battle, all players win the game if everybody's still alive, but you lose if any survivor's hit points is reduced to 0, then they didn't make it. Or if the survivor calendar marker and the infected calendar marker, the white and the black tokens there, are on the same space of the calendar track. So if you have this one here, for example, and you were over here and you needed to spend another day, then you lose. Or if you lose another day, then your time is up. And you also lose when a 6th boss token, it has to be placed next to the boss challenge. So if you took lots of risks and a lot of these tokens were placed here, this has an X on it, which means if this one is placed, it's game over. Jackson is completely overrun and you've lost the game. And when you engage in combat with the boss, you not only flip over this card, but also any boss tokens that might be here, and you just apply what they do. And some of them will have extra dice. Here it says +1 of these black dice. So chapter die here, +2 and +3. There is a no sneaking and a no listening token, so you can't do that, whatever the card says. And here's another +1. So you want to avoid getting boss tokens, because those will make the combat with the boss a lot more difficult. So there you go. Those were all the rules on how to play The Last of Us Escape the Dark. Let's go to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on The Last of Us Escape the Dark by Themeborne. As always, let's start with the components. So all of this looks amazing. You've got lots of cards, lots of dice, you've got the board, and everything is in that same black and white aesthetic. It just looks really nice. The cards are of a very good quality. They're nice and thick, and they're nice and big as well, the chapter cards. I got the sleeves that they had with the Kickstarter for them as well, which makes them look really nice. They're kind of like matte on one side and glossy on the other side, which has this, like the clear side for the side with the text and the matte side for the back of the cards. At least that's how I put them in. You've got all of these tokens, and they are very thick, really nice, sturdy, thick quality for these. And then there's, of course, the smaller cards, which again are of a very good, nice and thick, nice and sturdy quality. So, you know, they're great, but I sleeve them anyway because that makes it easier to shuffle. Not that you need to shuffle a lot of these. The big cards you need to shuffle, and these item cards you need to shuffle. The rest are basically just decks that you browse through. You've got component inserts. So you got these trays here, which are really nice for keeping all of your tokens, all of those black cubes that you need for your character boards, and of course for all of the combat dice here. These are so nice. And these ranged attack hit dice. So you have these, which are the normal sized dice, and these as well for your chapter dice. And there's so many of them, and you roll all of those, and depending on how many players, of course, engage in a combat or whatever you encounter, you roll all of those dice, and that's just a lot of fun to do. And your character dice are the big chunky ones with all of those faces on them, and they even have their names on them, so you can easily tell them apart. And that looks just amazing. Everything about this game is really produced very well. Even the character boards here are double layered, so you have these slots to put your cubes in. They won't slide off. You do have just regular slots for the cards. You put those on top. I guess there wasn't enough room to make that like a vault for cards, and might have been hard to take them off as well, with especially with sleeves. So I guess they tested that and gone with this decision here. I do like that you get these player aids, the two of them. They could have made a few more, I think, because, you know, usually if you play with two, it's enough. But if you play with more, then you need to pass these around. But they're big, so you can put one on each side of the table and just read them. But they are also double-sided, so you flip them over a lot. So having two of these, one on each side, is also quite handy. But it'll have to do, and that's fine. There's not a lot of stuff on there anyway. And there's even a tray for all the cards. In the bottom of the box, you have the big tray for the big cards, two slots for smaller cards with a lid, and then these two just sit next to that. And these also have a lid, so everything stays nicely organized in your box. And you just take it out, put it on the table, put the board down, and just do the setup, and you're ready to go. That works really fast. And yeah, everything, like I said, is just top quality. The art is beautiful. I love the black and white aesthetic from all the Escape the Dark games that Themeborne has done. The art of the characters looks really good, and it's really nice how they captured the actual characters from the video game quite well, and also the monsters and everything that you encounter. That's done really nicely. Most of the cards will just have, you know, a little bit of art for a weapon or something, or an item. These all have these little bits of illustration, but all of it is done in the hand-drawn black and white line art, and that's just really, really beautiful. And I love that this game also has a board. Previous games were just a stack of cards that you go through, but this has the whole board with different paths you can take to the end. And it looks great. It looks great. It's very dark, of course. It's moody. It's thematic. And yeah, I enjoy that a lot. So the theme then is also really cool. It is, of course, based on the video game of the same name, which also has a TV show, and I recommend watching that. I loved watching those episodes, and well, this just ties in really well. You're traveling through several locations, and then you're going through the sewers and then to the university or the lakeside, or both if you split the part. You can even move between those before you go to Jackson and face the final boss. And yeah, I think that's just really thematic. There's a lot of cards in here that you will recognize from the video game and or the TV show, so that's pretty cool as well. Really ties in well, I think, so they did an excellent job on the theme. Then, of course, the gameplay. It's mostly pressure luck. You're rolling dice, you're trying to beat them, but there's plenty of decisions to make here. You're deciding where to go. You're deciding who gets to do an encounter, if you're going alone or if you're going in a team. Sometimes you want to go alone because you want to have that flaw unlocked in your character flaws there. You want to get rid of those cubes as fast as you can so you can get that special ability, which is really good and really will help you in your game, because it's a tough game. It's really hard to beat. And there's a lot of challenges, and it usually comes down to the final bit. The times we've played, we've always made it to the boss, sometimes with plenty of equipment, sometimes not so much, where we were really struggling. And then, of course, the boss is going to be really hard and you'll likely fail. But if you're well equipped and you face the final boss, you have a better odds of winning, of course. So you really have to take that into account. And sometimes you want to split up, sometimes you don't. And you need to, of course, clear all those threat markers before you can travel on. And every time your calendar marker gets to one of those exclamation marks, all the locations get more threat markers. So then, you've just cleared out your path. You spend another day and it comes back and you need to fight again. Sometimes you get lucky and you find a card that's not that challenging, like the safe, that we saw in the example in this video. You can either get some extra loot or you don't, but that's it. And one threat marker is removed and nobody takes damage, which is great. But most of the cards are indeed quite dangerous, and you shuffle them. So at the start of the game, there's 4 on each location and 3 remain in the box. So you never know what you're going to encounter. So that's a lot of fun as well. And same goes with the stash items, which is a nice mechanism, I think. You have these things that can happen. You can either get a negative event, which is this, and if you draw that blind, well, then something bad happens. You might lose a day, you might take damage, anything could happen. But if you have intel about a location, you can already look at it. If it's an event, it goes away. And if it's an item, then you know, well, now there's a cool weapon to be had there, and I'm going to try and get that because that will really help. This is an amazing weapon. So you want to go there and then try and get that. So there's a lot of choices to be made. I love that. And not just making choices, there's also pushing your luck, because, of course, you sometimes don't know which card you're going to get. You sometimes don't know if you'll make it if you go in alone. You just have the one die. That's it. You have one die. Maybe you have a ranged weapon and you're going to shoot a bit before engaging in melee combat. And some of the monsters that you'll encounter might only have melee combat, because the fungus monsters, the clickers and such, they don't have ranged weapons. They just run at you and they start fighting and biting you. So they only have melee attacks. So it is a good idea to have some ranged weapons or some throwables to throw at them first, so that you don't get damage back the first couple of rounds and already do some damage to then remove some chapter dice. And then when it comes down to fighting melee, you roll these dice and you just hope for the best. You might have some abilities that let you roll again and keep the best out of the two if you have your special abilities unlocked, or some cards that will help you with that. You can do the listen or the sneak attack before you actually attack, and if you pass the listen, you take away some dice, and if you pass the sneak, you can also take away your dice, or you can remain hidden and do a sneak attack with a weapon that allows you to do so, and you need a throwable or a ranged weapon for that. But that's really cool and really immersive as well. You really feel immersed in this story, and that's a lot of fun. I just really enjoy every aspect of this game. You're building up to this final battle. You're trying to gear up and be left with a lot of health, of course, before you go to that final battle. But all these encounters are tough and will take away your health and maybe even your items, and your items might break as well. You might spend the durability of your melee weapon and break it, or you might spend all your bullets and not find any new bullets to reload your weapon, because those bullets are in the item deck. Of course, sometimes when you clear an entire location, that's great. You get to reload your weapons for free on some cards. And that is something you want to go for. At some point, after many plays, you'll know the cards and you'll know, well, in this location we might find this, or one of the 5 clear cards, which are those big ones that you get when you clear the location, they might have medical supplies or let you use the workbench, and it's always great. These are always good news. So you kind of want to clear if you can. If you like have 1 or 2 cards left, you're like, okay, we're gonna push our luck. Do we have time still on the calendar? Can we afford to spend more time here, or do we need to move on? And if you can afford it, yeah, let's just try and clear this location so we can stock up on some good things again. Really well done, really well balanced, very, very enjoyable. And it does feel like the next evolution in the Escape the Dark games. In Escape the Dark Castle, you just had a stack of cards in 3 chapters with increasing difficulty. You fight through those as a group. Sometimes somebody may just not fight along because they need to heal or something. They need to rest. And that was basically it. You just roll those big dice and see if you can beat the chapter dice. And then you fight a final boss and you escape the castle. Then came Escape the Dark Sector, in which they introduced ranged weapons and flanking, and there were some new mechanisms there and some new dice even. And with the expansions for both games, they introduced new mechanics as well, which I really enjoyed. Really added to the game, and you got some new cards and new dice that did different things. And it's like they took all of that and all of those, the feedback that they got from those 2 games, and they put it all into this one, which is really the next evolution in the game series. So if you enjoyed the Escape the Dark series, and if you enjoyed The Last of Us, then you're gonna love this, absolutely. Then the replayability is pretty good. There is, of course, the same board with the same game you're playing, with the same locations, but the things you encounter are going to be different because, you shuffle the deck and you leave 3 out. There's only 4 out of 7 on each location. And the bosses, there's 3 different end battles, so you pick one of those and you never know which one it's going to be. They're all difficult. And then of course you have these tokens, these boss tokens that you might need to add, but you want to avoid that because some of them, aren't that bad. Like some of them are just add 1 chapter die. Okay, you can live with that. But there's like also the ones with the 3, there's one with 3 chapter dice. That's pretty bad. And one with 2, of course, and the ones that don't let you listen or do that sneak attack, and that's pretty negative as well, because if you can do that and you're good at it because you have a high sneak or a high wisdom, or a high cunning or wisdom, or you have items that help you with that, you kind of want to take advantage of that. And if you can't, well, you might have those items, but you can't use them, and that's a bummer. So you want to avoid getting these. Anyway, replayability is pretty high, and of course, you're rolling dice, so there's a lot of randomness as well, but you have, of course, to mitigate that. Your game will be different every time you play. Plus, you have like 6 different characters, so you can choose your characters differently every time. If you're playing solo, you're playing 2 characters, so you can switch that up as you want. You can split the party. You can take all kinds of different tactics and strategies to try and make it to the end. So I would say replayability is very high, and I think that Themeborne might actually make expansions for this, because they did for the previous 2 games, and I don't think it's gonna be that hard to just come up with extra chapter cards to just add to these locations, or some extra new boss cards that you fight at the end. Maybe even new characters with new cards or new item cards or whatever. There's probably stuff that they can cook up that will, go nicely with the game that we already have. I don't think that would be too hard to do, to make a simple expansion if you want more cards and new things. If you've already seen everything here there is to see, it'll still be a different game every time, but I see potential for an expansion here. Then finally, there's the language dependency. The game is, of course, very heavily language dependent because all the cards have text on them. All of these locations have a lot of text on them that you read and that you need to do. all the item cards, they have text on them. There's a lot to read here. So it is, unfortunately, but it's just inherent to the game, very language dependent. So you will need to either find a game in your language or just be sufficiently proficient at the English language. So yeah, keep that in mind when considering if you want to get this game or not. So in the end, I am very enthusiastic about this game. I'm giving it big 2 thumbs up. I really enjoy playing this. It's super exciting, super thematic, and it's different every time. I love it, and it looks absolutely stunning. I think it's incredible what you can do with just black and white. I mean, this would probably also look good in color, but the black and white just adds to the atmosphere and the immersion that you have with this game. So really well done. I would like to thank Themeborne for sending over a copy for me to review. It's very much appreciated. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That helps the channel. And please also hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. And please also check out my Patreon page by clicking the link in the description below or the icon at the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.